I've been speaking with contacts in Rafah since news broke early this morning, and I can tell you there's a massive sense of panic and shock there as well. People are telling me that they are terrified, but they're confused too. They don't know whether or not the safe thing for them and their families is to go or to stay. And if they are to leave where they should go, there is a deep mistrust of the Israeli military and messaging from the Israeli military within Gaza, particularly because in previous instances where the IDF has established safe zones and humanitarian zones, those areas have been targeted and bombed by the Israeli military. So people in Rafah are telling me they don't know what to do. We have seen this morning that people are leaving those areas in eastern Rafah where the text messages and those flyers have been dropped from the sky. They've been taking whatever means they can to try and leave there in what they say is another forced displacement. They have been hopping on carts that have been pulled by donkeys. They've been trying to get lifts in cars if anybody has any petrol to be able to move people. And others are simply leaving on foot, taking what they can. And a reminder, Bev, that for many of these people, they have already been displaced many times because Rafah is where the Israeli military said previously was the safe zone, and it directed more than 1 million Palestinians to flee fighting elsewhere in Gaza and move to Rafah. Now, at least 100,000 people in the eastern sections of Rafah are being told that there will soon be some sort of military operation there. We don't know how big it will be, whether or not it will be expanded into a wider operation in the rest of Rafah, but certainly there's a lot of fear and anxiety in Rafah at the moment.
I can only imagine. Allyson, what is our understanding of how significant Hamas's presence is in and around Rafah?
Well, the IDF says the last remaining battalions of Hamas are hiding out in Rafah, and that is why the military and the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has for months been saying Israel has to enter Rafah, because if they want to fulfil their goals of victory in this war in eliminating Hamas, they have to go into Rafah. That's what they're saying. And interestingly, yesterday we did see a barrage of rockets being shot by Hamas out of Rafah to the Kerem Shalom crossing, which is one of the few humanitarian aid crossings in the south of Gaza. That crossing, that barrage of rockets hit Israeli soldiers that were stationed there. 4 of those soldiers were killed. So there is some suspicion in the Israeli media that the announcement of today's, forced evacuations is perhaps directly tied to what happened just 24 hours ago, and that this is being seen as a direct retaliation there. But there is also massive fear and concern from humanitarian and aid organisations that this could be expanded into a wider offensive. Israel, for its part, hasn't given a timeline or any indication of how long people there have to get out. They're not even saying what sort of operation it would be there, but we are expecting to see that there will be some sort of military action in at least those eastern parts of Rafah in the next few days.
Yeah, and it is interesting to try and work out what the timing might be, given there are still efforts to try and bring both parties to the table and achieve some form of ceasefire.
Yeah, there's been this delicate diplomatic tightrope that's been, tightrope that's been walked over the last week and a half, where a proposal for a ceasefire and hostage release deal was drafted by Israel and given to Hamas. And senior leaders from Hamas went to Cairo, which was working as a mediator, to try and, look through this proposal and whether or not they would agree. Hamas says it's still going over that proposal. There is, though, one key sticking point, and it's the withdrawal of Israeli troops. It's the same issue that has brought every negotiation attempt undone up until this point, which is Hamas wants to see a full withdrawal of Israeli troops from Gaza, and Israel says it will never agree to that until the war is over from its position. So there has been this key sticking point, but even up until this morning, there has been optimism that that issue can still be worked through and that a ceasefire deal could be negotiated. It appears now, though, that things are precariously falling nearly over the edge. Hamas has said this morning that this announcement by Israel that it plans to go into Rafah is really scuttling the negotiations, whereas many times as well in the last week, Benjamin Netanyahu, the Israeli Prime Minister, has once again reaffirmed that he does plan to go into Rafah, even without a ceasefire, with or without a ceasefire deal. Now, behind the scenes, the United States is working furiously to try and get a deal. And hostage families here in Israel, many of them are also incredibly anxious. They believe that if a ceasefire deal isn't reached before a Rafah invasion starts, then that would effectively be the end of any negotiation attempts. And they seriously are concerned for the welfare of their loved ones.
Precarious times. Allyson, appreciate the update. Thank you so much.